Run.
Everyone. Dun 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 dun.
Don't Naruto run, just run.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I was referencing that TikTok where it's just like music and then run.
Dun 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 dun.
Okay, what section are we in now?
Story and themes. Okay, how do you describe this?
Well,
Love, fond misunderstanding.
I mean, it's you know what it reminds me of a lot. If I were to like describe it as like a phrase, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is like a high school life story. Not a love story necessarily, but like a life. This is the story of these characters' lives in school. You know, because it's not just like focusing on like their love lives and how awkward they are or whatever, you know, around each other. It's like their actual like everything. It's beautiful.
So slice of life?
Kind of.
But slice of life is often like I often find personally that slice of life is very surface skimming, like a mile wide and inch deep is what slice of life often feels like, because they try to focus on so many different things. And I think the good thing about getting this show where there's like 4 main characters ish.
I think the
4
best,
or 5 depending on what you're looking at.
Yeah,
I think
4 to 5.
different
I
arcs.
think the best way to describe this is not slice of life, but everyday life.
Yeah, it's like everyday life, because it's not just taking like a slice like where you're looking at like their romance or the way that they handle school. No, you're looking at like what they're doing every day. And because you're really only focusing on 4 or 5 characters, but you're focusing on every part of those characters, you get a lot more in depth on all of them, as opposed to like, for example, HIGHSCHOOL, where you have to cover so many characters. It's the same problem in Prince of Tennis. It happens in a lot of sports anime. You're just covering so many characters that you can't talk about each one in as much depth.
Now, it starts with a relationship that's not going to happen. It starts very romantically focused.
Yes.
But as it goes on, it doesn't, like, it keeps up the same formula, and it makes the joke that that's still going on, and it still comes up a lot. But also, it focuses a lot more on the other character. It isn't purely about that romance.
It feels like one of those TV shows where they're like, and this is the story of how I got married. But let me take you back to the beginning. Starts 15 years earlier. Totally different country, different characters. Like, that's what it feels like.
Chica is chaotic evil, and I love her. I love
Chica is bae.
Yes.
But so is Glasses-kun, so.
Oh yeah, Ishigami.
Like, I can't even, like, I'd have to pick both a husbandu and a waifu for this show, because I can't choose between them.
Well, let's stop ourselves here, because we don't want to end up with a Fate Zero situation where we merge the sections again.
That's true.
We'll consider working on that in future seasons. But,
yeah.
As far as the overall story of this show goes, though, I find it interesting that they're all kind of split. Like, you can see the light novel roots of this all, where it's split up into chapters.
It actually
or it's a manga, I believe.
It is actually a manga. It is
like the manga, like the more literary roots, where you can actually see the splitting of the chapters in the same episode. So, even though every chapter tends to be one comedy routine, I guess, comedy routine with a heart.
And the best way you can like tell that a comedy routine has ended is the little someone has lost or won.
Yeah.
That's always how a chapter ends. Someone lost, someone won.
Yeah.
Or both.
It's like a constant scoreboard.
And they even keep that up when they start being a little bit more dramatic towards the end. So, like at the big fireworks arc, it's a generic arc, but I think the way the show actually goes about presenting it, with the way it splits its chapters, the way it the way it tells its, like the way that it splits its chapters, but it keeps the same format as the more lighthearted, joking chapters. I think it does help make the generic arc a lot less tiresome to watch than something like, let's say, Snafu's most generic arcs.
Yeah. I mean, I still, I gotta admit, I still like, it is still a school anime, and it is still a lot of arcs that I feel like I've seen before. So at times it was still like, well, I've seen this before, like 5 or 6 times. But it wasn't like Snafu was for me, where it was like, ugh, I've seen this before and there's nothing new. It was like, I've seen this before, but I could watch it again in this version, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just had like enough of its own sense of self.
but
separate from
that's
the
where
like.
the organization of the story really
Yeah.
does give it that sense of self.
Yeah.
What was it? God, oh God, I didn't want to fall into this trap again. I had something.
You're welcome, everybody.
Give him the phone from the box, or else I'm
Let me.
freaking.
No.
His phone's not in the box.
We'll move on.
Okay.
We'll move on.
Anyone have any other thoughts on the story before we move on to characters or the themes?
I mean, I think we're just all in agreement that it was a really fantastic. I mean, they did a really good job at taking high school life and not leaving us just going like, well, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Because that's the problem. There are so many high school anime, and I think it feels like one of the things about high school anime in Japan is they always cover like the same 5 fucking events constantly, again and again and again.
That's it.
And it's not that those events are bad, and I get why they cover them because they're cultural common things, you know, like the school festival, you know, or that kind of thing, or that we always see like a student body president or something. No matter who the characters are, there's always going to be a student body, then we're going to see it in a certain episode. But these feel like enough liberties were taken.
I remember what I was going to say now in regards to the school. It was in regards to the school, I think. If you don't mind me leading us on a slight tangent, I saw an actually interesting argument the other day as to why so much Japanese media throws itself back into high school despite it being a bit overused.
I mean, I have my own theory on that, but it's depressing, sad, and funded by COVID.
I don't know if mine's funded by COVID, but the theory I saw on it was, think about Japanese work culture and how much time that actually leads for side events that aren't just you in the office. Like, you can make an office show, but if it's not in the office, like, you can't really leave it as much if you're in, say, a work environment or a college environment. That's why there's really 2 genres of commonly in Japanese anime. Yeah, fantasy and high school.
If it's an office worker show, that it has to be centered in the office with the office workers doing their office stuff.
Yeah.
Like I've seen this in some Chinese dramas that I watch, like Refresh Man. You know, like they are constantly in the office. They're never out of the office for any reason other than to do a group outing, you know? There's no room for like a festival here, you know, or like an after school study session there.
It has to be office related activity.
Yeah, or a chance meeting at the local market when you're reaching for the same piece of zucchini.
And then that leaves really only 2 settings. Like,
I feel like I meant to say eggplant. I'm sorry.
I mean, you know, we get the context. I think
matter. Just
okay.
But that leaves only like 2 settings you could pick from that's not fantasy: the high school setting and then college. But high school is just the more relatable setting because not everyone went to college.
Yeah,
a lot more people work, but it's a very restricting setting.
And college isn't as standardized around the world as a school is, like grades K-12. You know, like everybody pretty much around the world goes to elementary school. And then most people move on to middle school, and the majority of people do move on to high school, even if you don't complete high school, you know, or if your high school is a different length than ours. But college is really a big dividing factor because a lot of people don't go to college. They might go to vocational
not everyone
school.
Has the same college experience as one another.
Yeah, for example, college in Russia versus college in Japan versus college in America, that's 3 totally different systems.
That doesn't make me any less sick of the overuse of high school.
Yeah.
At the same time, it does make me a little bit more forgiving of it being used as a setting. Even if it still bores me to death when not done well.
Yeah, I think but you know what? It's one of those things where, you know, even in regular TV, there are certain settings that are just used again and again and again and again. And I think it's because there just aren't that many totally unique settings, you know? Because the setting is basically your whole world. So you're either in our world or not in our world. And then if you're in our world, you have to pick like a genre of in our world, but there's only so many genres of in our world.
And only so many of those are relatable to certain people.
Yeah.
And the more like niche you make that scenario, the less appeal your show will have.
Yeah, like the majority of people aren't gonna, for example, King's Avatar, Chinese anime. Most people aren't gonna relate to being the #1 gamer in the world working at a competitive game mining company where all you do is play games all day to win online tournaments.
Yep.
Most people aren't going to relate with that, you know?
And that can have a bit of an adverse effect if, let's say, you look at someone in a completely unrelatable situation having these problems that are like, dude, I'm sitting here working my ass off 9 to 5.
Yeah, like we work Amazon night shift, and like you
Yeah.
get to work 9 to 5 and have vacation days.
Or you're literally gaming for life, and you're upset that you're no longer on one. How?
Yeah. Like you're upset that you're gaming too much, that you're burning out. Like, fuck off. I can barely even find time to game, you know?
Whereas like when you take something like a high school or school setting, it's a lot easier. Like, okay, this is just that person's point in life.
Yeah, high school is high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only real differentiation in high schools is if you're going to a public or a private. And that actually does provide two totally different settings, because private schools will often be very different, because the students will all be either of a higher class, or there'll be a certain genre of people like genius, or they'll be living in dorms, which is a good way to differentiate a school setting. But then it also requires you to make them unrelatable, that they're either all geniuses, or they all won a scholarship, or they all did this because they have to be allowed in, like Harry Potter. You know, Hogwarts isn't necessarily relatable because I'm not magical, and fuck everyone for the fact that I'm not.
I'm going to elaborate on this more in the next section. The Kaguya setting is not exactly relatable either, because we're not rich.
That's true.
Oh yeah.
These are some of the most, if you're looking at it at that standard, this is like the most unrealistic you can get, or unrelatable you can get, without going to the straight.
Because this is a Japanese prep school.
Yeah. Which is why I brought it up. Like this is
to the absurd level where, like, what was it? There was one scene where someone brings up at the budget meeting that if the president said the wrong thing, the last one ended up getting chased out of the city.
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of the Oron effect, because like in Oron, it's a private school, and everyone is absurdly rich. And I think the greatest way that I've found, because I've watched a lot of school life, or both Oron and Kaguya use this, is if you're gonna set it in a private school and make it unrelatable in that way, then to me, every experience I've had of a show set, or a book, manga, like Hanakimi or Hanayori Dango, set in a private school, is there's always an introduction of a commoner or someone who is less wealthy, A, to show the differences, and B, comedy gold. Rich people are like a mine of gold for comedy.
We have Shirogane, the president, for that role.
Yes.
I don't necessarily think he plays out of it very much.
No, but the thing is, rich people are comedy gold in prep schools. And that is the best way to go if you're going to go with a prep school, because honestly, rich people can do the stupidest things and it's completely reasonable.
Because they have money to get away with it.
Yeah, like I can absolutely see a 12-year-old showing up in like a brand new Lamborghini that he drove on his own, and the cops like escorted him because he just paid them rather than ticketing him.
What I will say is what the setting also does, though, it adds something of like the same kind of feeling you get watching Villainous with that aristocratic society. It kind of has that same kind of joke to it.
Hey, are we rambling on a bit too much right now?
I don't know. We're in theme, storyline, and settings.
Okay.
I just found another subject that got us going again.
And I am very much in on this one, because some of my favorite things ever are Hanayori Dango. Like that's one of my favorite shows and books ever. And that is very much the trope of like rich prep school. And oh my God, these rich kids.
And also, this is honestly like a conversation that I do enjoy, because like as I've gotten older, I've watched less and less anime, and I think it's because specifically like how what we're talking about now, it's always these like specific like tropes that we always follow for the setting, because it's very predictable. It's either going to be high school, fantasy, or just like some other like, or maybe some business, or maybe occasionally you get a college scenario.
And occasionally elementary or middle.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're younger.
Yeah.
But I will make one comment to that, is that at least in Japanese anime and Japanese school, grade 1 and grade 11 are really interchangeable with how school relationships play out. Like it's Japanese schooling in anime is such a universal constant until you hit college from like grade 1 upwards. It's not like, for example, like here in the US, right? Elementary school is very different from high school, like incredibly different. That is not the case in Japan.
Yeah.
It is relatively constant. So I almost don't differentiate elementary, middle, and high school, other than like romantic relationships are usually developed more like in a sexual nature in high school and more in a platonic nature in elementary school dramas. And middle school can really go either way.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I'm figuring out the reason why we don't actually understand like the president that much in terms of the commoner role is because we're in America and he's in Japan. The difference between cultures for commoners at that point is like we think of ourselves as commoners probably having an actual car, actually having a house that's bigger than one room.
I understand his position in the commoner role.
Yeah.
But well, I'm sure we can get more into this in the character section. But his personality is written in a way that is supposed to be the commoner playing in that society, and it was not the commoner fish out of water scenario.
Yeah, no, because there's two. It's commoner fish out of water and commoner like trying to fit in.
Like the entire show is founded upon him trying to, like him in that like I must not be the inferior person if I want to move up into society.
Oh gosh, I've seen something where it's. Oh gosh, I want to say I've recently seen. I don't remember if it was an anime or a movie or a TV show, and that makes it horrendous to try to identify. But it was a person pretending to be a lot more wealthy than they were in like a private school or something like setting, and then they were found out.
Trump the anime?
God damn,
oh God, no!
Freaking heck out what you're talking about.
No, but that's great. No, but I mean, like you know what? Give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna cut this out of the video.
It sounds American.
No, because it is desperately bothering me that I can't remember what this is, and it's kind of on the tip of my tongue. So give me a couple minutes to try to.
I feel like I also know what you're talking about, but I can't remember it either.
There's a lot of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
But it was like specifically the like being exposed for like not being rich. It was
okay, so the premise like they're exposed for not being rich, but basically like, okay, I won't tell everyone if you do like X or Y.
I feel like
Okay.
Yeah, and then they do end up. Oh, actually, you know what? No, I got it. Right. So the one I'm thinking of is specifically I think it's actually an example in Hanayori Dango. Okay. There's a character in Hanayori Dango who pretends to be a lot more wealthy than she is because she was wealthy when she was a child and she was enrolled in the school, but something happened to her on the in-between and she ended up being like really, really fucking poor when she came back into the show. So she spends like her entire character arc in the show pretending to be wealthy until someone reveals that she's actually all the money that she's using she's getting from like prostituting herself on the streets.
Ooh.
Because her parents are like dirt fucking poor now.
Yeah,
that's kind of depressing, but that's what always because that's the poor commoner trying to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the poor commoner fish out of water like Haruhi from Oran.
Yeah.
And I don't mind that there's really only the two tropes for like poor commoner in private school. I guess there's a third trope, which would be like hardworking scholarship students, but that can often fall into one of the other two.
Like that's probably like Shirogane would fall into there.
Yeah, but the problem is often that's just a basis for the character, but then that character is either also a fish out of water or also pretending to be a higher class than they are.
Well, he's not hiding that he's a higher class.
Yeah.
At this point, do you guys want to move into characters?
Yeah, let's get into characters at this point. Let's get into characters.
Try
harder.
Nobody.
Hey.